Well, welcome to the Beyond Cinema studio up here at Sundance, Thomas, Marc, and Lucas. Firstly, this film's now played three kind of different towns, you know, Park City, Ogden, Salt Lake. Has the audience been different in each one? How have you found the reception?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the two screenings, I was just saying this in another interview, that two of the screenings that I think have affected me the most was in Salt Lake City and in Ogden, because what you're looking at is an audience who either have a pre-existing interest in the issue, of course, but then there are people that have been directly affected by the things that we're talking about in this film, and to see their reaction to the movie, which is, you have people coming up to you at the end of the screening saying, thank you for doing this, thank you for, you know, my own experiences reflected in this film, or people that I know is reflected in this film. And I think that it kind of cuts back to the kind of core thing that we were trying to do making this film, which is about rendering one human experience of this situation, and doing it because what we really want to do is sensitize people to the human stories that underpin what is so often a game of statistics or a debate which sits on the left and right. So that for me has been undoubtedly the best experience here at the festival, is going to Ogden in particular, where after the Q&A we had to go out into the lobby and we had to spend a lot of time, and people were incredibly emotional and incredibly sort of swept up in what they'd seen in the film.
There was one woman who came up to us and just stood in front of us and burst into tears and said that when she was 1.5 years old, her family carried her through the desert as a baby. And when she watched the film, it resonated with her that could have been her and her family.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm always fascinated, you know, I go to the Middle East and everybody working there is from the Philippines.
Right.
You go to, like, there's certain demographics
Absolutely.
that, you know, occupy the 7-Elevens or Dunkin' Donuts, and you want to know who that first person was.
Yeah.
Also
That's why this is a story that goes beyond just the US-Mexico border. It's universal in its themes.
So how would you define an economic migrant as opposed to any other sort?
How would I define? I think it's more that I've learnt from spending time in Honduras and Mexico that poverty at home drives people to, you know, seek a better life. And that's not necessarily about nationality or the difference between people. I think that feeling is universal across the world. I don't know, you know, other definitions of migration or migrants. The other films that I've made have been about refugees who have been escaping from war zones. So in my experience, the two driving forces of why people leave home are economic or war.
I think a more interesting point more than economic is the term illegal or alien. I think that's one of the big themes that we deal with in this film. I think is defining them as illegal or as aliens. I think is much more problematic than kind of framing them purely from an economic standpoint. And I feel what we're hoping to do with a film like this is to actually try to, you know, kind of open the eyes towards the debate, and to a certain extent the hypocrisy, even here in Sundance, behind this kind of, you know, beautiful, there is like a whole society that is defined by as criminals or as illegals, but actually are a huge functioning part of this society, are embraced within that. So I think that's one of the big themes on our film that I think we're interested in continue to discuss after.
That it's not just the push factors, it's also the pull factors, and the fact that so much of this economy relies on that type of labour, but, you know, sweeps it under the carpet and makes it invisible.
Right.
And defines it as illegal.
Right, and we all have different accents, and we've all probably been termed an alien in some point, either in this country or in another.
Right.
But what separates us really from these people is really a dollar sign, because we've got the means to go through the official, you know, channels.
And this is the thing, when we first came across the story of skulls and skeletons in the desert of Arizona, it was less about asking who done it, but more about, you know, why is it and what happened. And, you know, as you just said, one of the main kind of core reasons for that, the DNA of that, is essentially like the division between rich and poor. It's more a class thing than a nationality thing.
But even with your short films, I mean, you know, looking at the effect of the London Olympics on the poor neighbourhoods, the refugee short film that you made as well, you've definitely got a draw towards the poverty-stricken or the underprivileged in that regard. Why is that such a resonant theme for you?
Because I think that the so-called the soft power that I have as a filmmaker, or even as someone who owns a camera and has the ability to sort of spread stories, I would rather use them to empower other people than sell Coca-Cola.
Did you want to add to something?
No, I was just going to say that, back to your question about defining what an economic migrant is, I think that I won't say too much more and encourage people to see the film, but the predicament that our central focus in this film faced was one where he felt he had to make that journey. And yes, that related to economics, but fundamentally it was about his family and the situation that they faced. And again, the semantics of it, I think, can be very difficult and very problematic, but what the film tries to do is take you all the way back into, okay, so what is the core motivation at this point in time when this person made this fateful journey? And that motivation, I think, incontestably is something that wherever you sit on the spectrum when you see this film, you would understand that actually, if you had enough courage, you would do what that man did. So I think that that's really crucial, because if he were able to answer your question, I think talking about the economics of it, that wouldn't work. It would have to be explained in terms of, this is the commitment that I have to those people that I love that are around me, and this is what I have to do. And I think that that's something that we're really hoping and trying to get people to bring into how they interact with this discourse, is knowing that actually a lot of those motivations, a lot of that reasoning is something that is sort of eminently relatable to wherever you come from in the world and wherever you sit in economically in your own situation.
Marc, at what point did this become something that you added a narrative thread to, that you decided to have, Gael, who you'd worked with before, but have Gael Garcia Bernal act out the scenes and have this kind of narrative element? And second part of the question is that when you brought on Marc?
Well, yeah, as you said, Gael and I had worked together on 4 short films about human rights abuses of migrants in southern Mexico. That was kind of going on in parallel to how the documentary discovery of the body was taking place. So there were a lot of, I guess, of narrative strands flying around at that point, as all good documentaries have at some point. And then literally we just collaborated together to work out. Gael had been interested in the subject for many years, was deeply committed to the films we made with Amnesty and was deeply emotionally affected by that experience. So collectively we worked out, what the best kind of role for him would be within this north-south, south-north journey.
I think it's a central part of how to make this film. And I think acting, is not quite appropriate as a word. This is a documentary about real people, and what we decided, what we tried to do with Gael is try to use the most effective narrative device to be able to be as truthful in telling that story. And I think that's how we kind of made the film, more than kind of thinking it as a narrative as such. It's much more, how can we actually try to humanize that story in the best possible way, knowing that our protagonist is someone that passed away, and that we felt that that device was potentially an interesting way to tell that story. And so I think that it is a documentary about real, real people in real situation, and Gael, effectively retraces a journey more than kind of.
I also think on that, we always had it in mind that this was a fundamental part of how we were going to tell this story. I mean, that was something that 4 of us, as we sat around thinking about the kind of film that we wanted to make, that was always our conviction that we wanted to do that. And in part, as Thomas says, this is a documentary. And the parts that you see with Gael, it's an extension of that documentary lens. What it allows you to do is, it means that you're not sitting behind the camera. What you're doing is you're participating with people. And what Gael does so brilliantly, I think, in the film is he not only is simultaneously allowing the audience to get a sense and picture what this man went through and the risks that he took and the journey that he took, but he's also allowing those people that he interacts with to have a voice. He's giving them a stage, and they are interacting on a level with one another. And it's about leveling the field. It's about saying to those people in the audience, this is a conversation that's taking place between equals, and this is something that is informed by these people's experience. And I think that even goes back to how we we shot this film. I think that it was a very low budget, it was a tiny crew. We retraced those steps and went on that journey as a team together. We got up there on top of the train. We were trying our level best to find a means of not only articulating our protagonist story, but allowing those people that we were interacting with, who were all real migrants, all making that journey that day, who we explained the concept of the film and what we were trying to achieve to, and they all said, I get it, I want to do it. And for them it was very important to be there on screen, because as Gael said in a previous, in one of our Q&As, he said, a lot of those people didn't know whether they would make it. And for them to be able to kind of put their face up there and have their moment and be able to say what they wanted to say and be part of a process whereby the viewer or people watching this film would take on board, these are real human beings, this is behind the rhetoric and everything else, this is the journey that people are making.
And I think I think even towards that is claiming an identity. Sorry, like I think like the one thing that the dynamic of this discourse creates is like the kind of you lose your identity. I think one of the things that I think that, the people we interacted with, that was a way to claim that identity and hold on to that in whatever form it was, by just kind of being part of this project. And again, I think that was a very intentional thing for us to do, as Lucas said, to try to kind of really level the playing field there. Sorry, Mark. He's going to say something a lot more intelligent than
Can't even remember the initial
That's right.
No, I came late. I came after they'd already shot most of the material, and it was clear looking at the rushes and what they had captured. It was like, it's so heartbreaking, so haunting in many ways. And I always felt Gael, it's almost an investigation by him. If you're an actor and you want to know the migrant's journey, you go do it.
Yeah.
If you want to be a doctor, you go hang out with doctors. You want to be a lawyer, you go hang out with lawyers. And I always felt that it was kind of, in a way, an investigation just of how dangerous it is, how heartbreaking it is. He has young children. To separate from your family with intent, with purpose, it's painful. It's a mix of emotions. And at the same time, there's a lot of solidarity around, a lot of brotherhood. You all know what you're doing. You all know what the risks are, what the potential outcome could be. And so I always thought it was very brave of Gael to do it, and to man up and actually do it.
Is this something that you found in your role as a writer for documentaries? It's one of those things that I'm sure you get asked, wait, you're a writer for documentaries? And the Writers Guild obviously acknowledges it, and has acknowledged you for The Cove and other projects. But for you, do you feel like, okay, well, how do you find that singular narrative or that singular point and help them edit?
It is a strange thing, I guess, to be a writer of documentaries, and I say it's like a niche within a niche. Documentaries are already kind of a niche within the Hollywood system, but I love it because it's about structuring a film to try to achieve a narrative arc that a narrative film has, to give the audience an emotional ride that they would have going to any film, and that involves the ups and downs and the kind of mystery and seduction of any film. And so in this particular film, an incredible challenge that Thomas mentioned is our protagonist. You never see him alive, you never hear him, you never get a chance to fall in love with him as a character, and that's incredibly challenging. So we wanted to make sure that we could get the audience on the train, on board with this film by having them come to know this man through the people who loved him early in the film.
I like how the train's referred to as the beast, like the bestia. Is that's something that obviously came from the people rather than your imposition of it?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, but absolutely, it takes on this mythic quality, and you almost paint a face, not Thomas the Tank Engine's face, but something a little more graphic on this thing. But also, in terms of taking that journey, going through these countries, did you then deliberately keep it like unofficial and shoot it guerrilla style and not, kind of inform and involve like local locations managers and scouts and all that sort of stuff in order to keep that kind of pure journey thread?
Yeah, I mean, we had an agency from Mexico called Grupo Beta, who are an unarmed force that are there to protect and help migrants, and they helped us from the journey from Guatemala up to the Arizona border. They're essentially like a human rights defenders group. As well as that, we wanted to do this in a way whereby the crew was going to not affect the story and not affect the locations. So yeah, we did it in the smallest, most intimate way we could do, and also work with local activists and human rights defenders along the way who work in the shelters, you know, help people on those train journeys. Previously, again, like me and Gael had visited shelters where people who have fallen from that train and end up like with amputated legs and arms. So yeah, we'd spent a lot of time kind of understanding that journey and didn't feel that putting in big cameras and big crews and getting permission from anyone would make that any better.
Right. And also I think in the way that it was shot, it's a really small group of people. It is like a documentary in that respect. There is no location manager. The locations happen to be exactly where people get on and off the trains, the shelters that they stay at, the route that they go along. So what I mean by that is it's as Thomas said, it's fundamentally a documentary. I mean, we're creative and a little bit playful with how we interact with that documentary element when we're with Gael, but it's all, everything you're seeing up there, I think that this is not a case of you have to get up on top of the train. Those people are on top of the train. That has been explained to them. We're making a film. This is our purpose and intent while we're on top of the train. It's at that point that they say to you, okay, I get it.
This is where we go next.
Yeah, it's just that's all happening in
and
real
to be able
time.
to react
It's
like
not,
that, we
yeah.
needed to be small.
Did you find that any of the subjects felt safer having you around?
No.
Or more, I mean, just the reverse.
Yeah, it was actually, yeah, I think, you know, having a couple of gringos running around with them was not, yeah, it didn't make anyone feel safer. I think we felt safer having them with us.
I thought a cool way to end this would be to have each of you state where you began your journey on this planet and where you are now.
Lucas.
I was born in the United States to a Colombian father and a mother from Scotland, so I'm a hybrid myself, but then I grew up in the UK. So that's my journey. Yeah,
Lucas the hybrid.
Very easy on guess.
I'm from Oklahoma. But my folks have a lineage that comes from Ireland, and went to California during the Dust Bowl and came back in a very migratory manner. So.
And you're now where?
I'm in Los Angeles.
I was born in London and still live in London. But I guess like my great-grandparents came from Holland and Poland, during the beginnings of the Second World War.
Can't wait for this one.
This one might take everything. This might take a while.
When you say ending, I'm not sure it's English, by the way. I'm really confused. Like, as in, I'm
half French or Brazilian with an Argentinian father, grew up in Italy, live in London. So the sense of belonging, actually this idea of belonging is actually quite close to my heart, in the sense that I generally don't know where home is, so that's me.
Home is where the heart is.
Yeah, well, I don't know where my heart is. My heart's gone a long time ago. I've now buried that deep.
It's a lost soul. It's a lost soul.
Very cool. Well, thanks for coming by and spending a few minutes.
Thank you so much for
having me.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.